What if I told you Scotland's history isn't only written in its castles, its wars, or its clans, but etched into something far older, something hidden not in stone, but in blood? Because when scientists began decoding Scottish DNA, they found something unlike anything else in the world. Inside those double helices are clues of forgotten tribes, vanished peoples, and migrations that turned Scotland into a living time capsule. The results challenge every simple story you've ever heard about the Scots being just Celtic with a splash of Viking. The reality is far stranger and far older. To uncover it, we need to wind the clock back, way back. 12,000 years ago, Scotland didn't exist the way we imagine it. No castles, no tartans, no clans. Instead, the entire land was buried beneath a suffocating sheet of ice. But as the last ice age thawed, the land reawakened. Forests spread, rivers carved through valleys, and animals roamed north once more. And trailing behind them came the first humans to ever set foot in Scotland. Here's the twist. These first Scots didn't look like what you're imagining. DNA reconstructions from skeletons of Britain's earliest settlers reveal people with dark brown skin, curly hair, and piercing blue eyes. Imagine it, an Ice Age hunter fishing on a misty Scottish loch with features that seem almost otherworldly today. These Mesolithic foragers weren't farmers or warriors yet. They lived in small bands, surviving on deer, fish, and wild plants, leaving only faint traces behind: stone tools, fire pits, and bones buried in caves. But the most extraordinary trace they left behind isn't in the soil, it's in people still alive today. Roughly 5 to 10% of modern Scots carry genetic markers that go directly back to these first settlers. That's not just ancestry, it's survival against all odds. These bloodlines endured for over 10,000 years, preserved in the highlands and on the islands, places so remote and rugged that later waves of migration couldn't wipe them out. Scotland's DNA begins here, with the survivors of the Ice Age, a people whose faces would shock us today, but whose blood still flows in veins across the highlands. But their survival wouldn't last forever, because thousands of years later, a new people arrived, outsiders carrying not just new tools, but new DNA powerful enough to rewrite Scotland's story. Around 4,500 years ago, waves of migrants swept in from Central Europe. Archaeologists call them the Beaker folk, named after their distinctive pottery shaped like upside-down bells. But pottery wasn't their real legacy, their genes were. Within just a few centuries, the Beaker newcomers transformed Scotland's bloodlines on a scale so massive it shocked modern scientists. Genetic studies revealed they replaced up to 90% of all male lineages. 9 out of 10 paternal bloodlines gone. Imagine that, almost an entire male ancestry erased from history, leaving only fragments of the old Mesolithic lines behind. And this wasn't through conquest or massacre. It was slower, quieter. New families merged, old ones faded, marriages shifted the balance. But the result was staggering. Almost overnight, in genetic terms, Scotland became a different nation. Still, the land itself fought back. In the most isolated glens and windswept isles, fragments of the Ice Age DNA clung on. And that's why today, Scottish DNA is so unusual. It's not just one story, it's a weave of two very different threads: the deep time survivors of the Mesolithic age and the newcomers of the Beaker wave. Together, they created the foundation for everything that would come after. By the time the Bronze Age gave way to the Iron Age, a new identity was stirring in Scotland. Fierce warriors who painted their bodies, fought with a ferocity that terrified Rome, and carved mysterious symbols into stone. The Romans called them the Picti, the Painted Ones. For centuries, historians believed the Picts were some strange, vanished tribe that simply disappeared. But DNA cracked the mystery wide open. The Picts weren't outsiders at all. They were the descendants of Scotland's earliest people, the Mesolithic hunters and Beaker folk, bound together into a culture Rome could never fully conquer. And when the Picts seemed to vanish in the records, it wasn't their bloodlines that disappeared. It was their identity. They blended into Gaelic Scotland, trading their painted symbols for new languages and customs. But their DNA lived on. Even today, Highlanders carry echoes of the Picts in their genetic code. When the legions of Rome marched north in the 1st century AD, they called this land Caledonia. They built walls, forts, and roads, but they never conquered the highlands. Scotland's mountains and tribes defied the empire. Yet Rome still left a trace, not through conquest, but through blood. Because Roman soldiers on Hadrian's Wall weren't just Italians. They came from Spain, Gaul, Syria, even North Africa. Some settled, married, and had families, and their children carried DNA markers that, against all odds, reached into Scotland. Today, faint but undeniable traces of Mediterranean and Middle Eastern ancestry can be found in the south of Scotland. Rare, yes, but proof that even at the edge of the empire, Scotland absorbed the world quietly, not through armies, but through families.
But Scotland's greatest transformation came not from Rome, but from the sea. Picture the horizon of the northern coast around the year 800. The water is calm until dark shapes appear, long ships slicing through the waves. The Vikings had arrived. At first, they raided. Then they settled. Islands like Orkney and Shetland became Norse strongholds where families farmed, traded, and built lives. And the DNA evidence is jaw-dropping. Up to 60% of male lineages in Orkney today are Norse in origin. That's higher than many parts of Norway itself. Imagine that. Modern Orcadians carry more Viking DNA than Scandinavians. And the Norse blood didn't stay confined to the islands. It spread through the Hebrides, into the Highlands, and even into the ruling classes of medieval Scotland. Clans with names like Bruce, Stuart, and Sinclair carry Viking ancestry woven into their stories. But here's where it gets strange. For centuries, people believed clans were giant family trees, all descending from one great ancestor. DNA tells a different tale. Some clans, like the Campbells, really do trace back to a single founder. But others, like the mighty MacDonalds, are genetic patchworks. Men with entirely different lineages carried the same surname because clans weren't just about blood. They were about survival, allegiance, and identity. Scotland's DNA isn't just Viking or Celtic or Mesolithic. It's something stranger. Hidden within it are outliers so rare they seem almost impossible. Markers that link Scots not only to Europe, but to deserts, steppes, and faraway worlds. In tiny fractions of family lines, DNA traces back to North Africa, the Middle East, even Siberia. Less than 1% of Scots carry these markers, but their very existence is astonishing. How did they arrive? Some likely came with Roman recruits. Others may have slipped in through Viking trade routes that stretched from the Atlantic to Russia. Imagine it, a fisherman in the outer Hebrides carrying DNA that traces to the Sahara, a highland family unknowingly tied to ancient Siberia. Even here, on the edge of the known world, Scotland was never truly isolated. And then there's the fiery genetic marker most famous of all, red hair. Only 1 to 2% of the world has it, but in Scotland, the number soars to around 13%, the highest anywhere on Earth. Caused by a mutation in the MC1R gene, it brought advantages in sunlight-starved northern lands, but also quirks: higher pain sensitivity, greater risk of skin cancer, and freckles that remain iconic today. But Scotland's DNA didn't stay trapped in its glens and islands. Over the last 3 centuries, millions of Scots left, driven by famine, by the Highland clearances, or by the lure of opportunity abroad. They carried their unique bloodlines with them to North America, to Canada, to Australia and New Zealand. Today, more than 30 million people worldwide claim Scottish ancestry. In the United States, Scots and Scottish-Irish settlers left a huge impact, especially in Appalachia, where their music, traditions, and yes, their DNA still echo through generations. So when we talk about Scottish DNA, we're not just talking about Scotland itself. We're talking about a global legacy, carried in millions of people who might not even realize the depth of the story running through their veins. In the rugged glens and windswept islands of Scotland, ancient bloodlines endured when history tried to erase them. From Ice Age hunters with dark skin and blue eyes to Beaker migrants who reshaped an entire nation. From painted Picts to Norse warriors, from faint Roman echoes to rare traces of Africa and Asia, Scotland's DNA is unlike anything ever discovered. It's not just ancestry, it's survival, it's identity. It's proof that even on the edge of the world, no people are ever truly isolated. Every Scot alive today is a living archive of survival, and every descendant abroad is evidence that blood can carry stories across continents and through time itself. If this story fascinated you, make sure to like and subscribe. It helps bring these hidden histories to more people. And tell us in the comments, what shocked you most? The Ice Age survivors, the Viking dominance, or the rare DNA links to faraway deserts? Your answer might inspire the next journey we take.